Hi everyone! Today I explain how I make fake rocks with waterfalls for your terrariums. But first, I apologize for my bad English, sorry for that. Okay, now in this video I will describe step by step equipment I used, design of waterfall, test of the pump, hiding of the foam, piping setup, applying and carving of the grit stuff, applying of the grout mix, then painting, and I will finish by the plug of the pump. Okay, let's start. For this tutorial, I used an Exoterra tank with a size of 12 by 18 inches, black aquarium sealant, grit stuff, no matter with the brand, just avoid cheapest item which will make holes and will be harder to cover afterwards. Grout and Sika latex. Sorry, packaging are in French, but tile grout is the mortar we use to make the joint between tiles, in kitchen for example. Sika latex is an item of the brand Sika which permits to obtain more waterproof and easy to use mortars. To paint, I used acrylic paint in 3 colors, black, grey and pure white. Acrylic paint is perfect for this kind of use. You can apply it on a huge range of material and it becomes neutral when totally dry. Utility knife and blades, knee connections in 13mm which are used for irrigation and that you can find in garden store. A submersible water pump. Note that it's not a filter but a pump which is used to drag the water on top of waterfall. The one I choose cost about 10 bucks. Before buy, do not forget to check the height you have to raise in your own tank. Hacksaw, half an inch aquarium water hose which fits to the pump. A caulk gun, PVC pipe with small diameter. Here I used 16mm inside and 20 outside. It is very hard to find in my country, and at the last step, I had some trouble to get back the cable of the pump through the pipe. I advise you to buy 7/8 inches, it's about 32mm, you can find easily in plumbing department of your local do-it-yourself store. Something to mix the grout. Brushes, finally I used just one of them. A plug to link the pump. This cost less than 2 bucks in all do-it-yourself stores. I forgot to include in this list some equipment. I also use gloves to avoid cuts on finger with utility knife blades and to avoid getting grit stuff on heads, cause with it you can get sticky hands during several weeks. Something to mix powder and Sika latex, such as spatula, a milter box to cut pipes as straight as possible, a bolt cutter or cutting pliers, and wire stripper. Important, note that the tank I'm using is just for tutorial purpose. There won't be any PET in it, so I didn't plan to apply epoxy resin, but the security sheet of Sika latex, which is available on Sika website, do not tell that it's compatible with drinking water. So if you want to place reptiles or fishes in the tank, I advise you to apply epoxy resin, such as R123 sold by Soloplast, which you can find in some do-it-yourself stores or on websites specialized in boat and yachting. This resin, when totally dry after some weeks and washed a few times, is totally safe for animals. To design waterfalls, I strongly advise you to make at least an hand-drawn sketch. To make things clean for this video, I made the design of the piping setup on 3D Studio Max 2016, but a simple sketch permits to have a better understanding of what we plan to create and to avoid nasty surprises at the end. I made a blank preliminary assembly to ensure that all works completely fine and as I wanted, and it's okay. To hide the foam, as you can see it, I decided to use black aquarium sealant, which I applied inside all faces of the tank. You could use undelible felt tip if you want. To fit pipes as clean as possible, to not see them move during foam drying, I decided to use adhesive cable wire base clamp, which permit to use a clamp and to hold in place electric wires. In this case, it will hold in place all hose and tubes for a very clean setup. It costs 1 or 2 bucks in electricity department, but it's up to you, you can use a simple tape for that. Meanwhile, I updated the design of the piping setup to get something cleaner and easier to place. I let you watch the final 3D render. A last test of the setup. Okay, it still works. I had to lime a bit knee connectors because these items are not made to link with aquarium hose and were impossible to connect in my greenhouse. So I limed most bulging parts. Feel free to drench hose in warm water to soften it. Then it will be easier to link. You can see here an overall view of the piping setup with piece of polystyrene to avoid pipe folding. Before start, you must think to the result you plan to achieve. I decided to make a little sketch that you can see on the left on the screen, and I take some reference photo on Pinterest and Google Images. You will see at the end that the final result won't look like with my sketch, but it permits to have an idea of the proportion of the cliff and waterfalls. Then I apply the Gritstuff foam. Be sure to take gloves, I repeat it, but you can get dirty and sticky fingers during several days or weeks. For more, be sure to do this outside or in a well-ventilated room because vapors are harmful. To finish, be sure to use the spray upside down. Only few brands sell sprays you can use in all directions. And feel free to tilt the tank to avoid grit stuff falling when drying. To carve, I use utility knife to trim grit stuff and getting wall shape. Then, I follow with just a blade. It is the reason why you really need gloves. Moreover, dry foam quickly blunt blades, so you will need 3 or 4 blades for this size of tank. To curve, I try to make only square cuts at the beginning to give angular shape. Then I make finishing with just the blade and I might use sandpaper too. After many hours of carving and a full garbage can, I get this. Now it's time to blend grout and Cicalatex. To do that the right way, I used 1 volume of Cicalatex for 2 volumes of water, which I pour directly in the container. Then I pour the grout and I mix until I get a kind of cream. It must be liquid but not completely. It must keep a certain thickness. I had to apply 4 layers to get enough hard and solid material and to cover whole surface. Be sure to let it dry on its own. If you dry it with sunlight or with hair dryer, water will evaporate and works will crack, so be patient. To have a better understanding of how to use different paint colors, look at this sphere. You can see that parts which are closest to light source are the lighter and farthest are the darker. Actually, the first color, the darkest one, will cover all foam setting to represent shadows and so on. Then grey part will cover parts which are more in relief. To finish, white one will permit to make pop small relief and parts which are worn by weather element. Take black paint, then blend it with a small amount of grey paint. Avoid full black, which will harm to the realism. Try instead very dark grey. Then cover all your cliff. You will see that you will forget to paint a lot of very small parts. I had to apply 3 layers of paint for a total covered rock background. After this step, I clean out side of the tank after the first layer with just a utility knife blade to remove excess of black sealant and grout on each side. For grey paint, I use a piece of sponge. The non-regular texture of the sponge will permit to not impact the most hollow parts. Then tap the rocks without leaning too much on and without going too much deeper in the hollows. For me, just 1 layer was enough. At this step, it's not realistic yet, but it's coming. To finish with painting, I use dry brush technique, which consists of using very few amount of paint and nothing else on the brush, as I am doing in the video. Then I apply the paint by fits and start. Don't lean too much on. Now you can see the small details and realism appearing. Do this on all the fake rocks, excepted on the most stavine parts. To get the wire through the pipe, I cut the plug of the pump, I get through the tube and I get it back on the other side. Then I strip the wire and I connect it to the new plug. The pump is now ready to work. On the other hand, this setup is not as waterproof as the original one, so I advise you to use the aquarium sealant to increase the tightness. To finish, I placed black sand on the bottom of the tank to keep same range of color, then I placed water. To watch the final result, click on the preview which appears or click on the link in the description. Feel free to ask your question in the comment section, I will try to reply. And if you liked the video, don't forget to share, like and subscribe. See you!